So, welcome.
Yeah, let you know that.
Welcome back again. I know the weather is very fine and very sunny, but we can also offer a very interesting speech and conversation now. We have an outstanding president here of Africa. It's Nana Akufo-Addo, the president of Ghana, that I will warmly welcome here on stage at the Democracy Summit in Copenhagen.
Your Excellencies, the founder and chairman of the Alliance of Democracies Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to stand before you today at this assembly of Democrats here in the ancient city of Copenhagen, capital of Denmark, which has a governance system founded on a constitutional monarchy with a well-entrenched democratic culture that has many admirers. The Republic of Ghana enjoys long-standing historic relations with the Kingdom of Denmark, dating from colonial times, when Danes were amongst the Europeans who landed on our shores in the 17th century. Danish slave traders and Christian missionaries, in equal measure, became very active in the then Gold Coast. One of the results of their activities was the construction of the magnificent Christiansborg Castle in 1661, which tragically became a leading vehicle in the conduct of the infamous transatlantic slave trade, but which ultimately ended up as the official residence and office of the British colonial governor, and finally became the residence and office of Ghana's first president, the celebrated Kwame Nkrumah. It is now a World Heritage Site and museum, which is proving to be a great tourist attraction. As a result of this intimate history, Her Majesty Queen Margaret II, then Queen of Denmark, was amongst the first foreign leaders to visit Ghana in the first year of my presidency in 2017. It was a visit which still has fond memories for us in Ghana. 4 years later, Danish Prime Minister, Her Excellency Mette Frederiksen, honored us with an official 2-day visit in 2021. We continue to appreciate those visits, and I'm glad that I now have the opportunity to visit Denmark. And I thank the chairman and founder of the summit, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, for the invitation. We gather at a pivotal moment, not just for our respective nations, but for the global community, as we navigate the intricacies of election year 2024, a year marked by the deep-seated aspirations of our citizens to have their voices heard and their votes counted. This year, across continents, people are poised to exercise their most fundamental democratic right, the right to vote. This simple act is the bedrock upon which our freedoms rest and is the most powerful tool citizens have to shape their future. In Ghana, as in several other nations, 2024 is not just another election year. It is a further strengthening of our democratic institutions and our renewal of our commitment to peaceful, free, and fair elections. It is a reflection of our unwavering belief in the principle that the authority of government derives solely from the freely expressed will of the people. Indeed, on 7th December, we, the people of Ghana, will go to the polls to elect new representatives to the House of Parliament and a new president to run our country, our affairs for the next 4 years. On 7th January 2025, a month after the elections, the newly elected president and members of Parliament will be sworn in to take office. I will, on that day, come to the end of the term of office, which the good people of Ghana had entrusted to me, first by electing me on 7th December 2016, and then renewing the mandate on 7th December 2020. This year in December will be the 9th successive time that we'll be going to the polls to elect our leaders, and the 9th successive time we have what can truly be called an election year. We are at the stage where taking it for granted that every 4 years we shall have an election year. There are young Ghanaians who know nothing else but a multi-party democracy, because this Fourth Republic of ours is 31 years old now, and every voter between the ages of 18 and 49 has had the advantage of having the certainty of an election year. It has become a cardinal feature of Ghana's Fourth Republic, which has generated the longest period of uninterrupted, free, stable constitutional government in our hitherto turbulent history. To those of us who are older, we sometimes still have to pinch ourselves to make sure that what we spent half of our lives fighting for, the establishment of democratic rule, is indeed today a reality. We are able to elect our leaders and not have them imposed on us through military coups or one-party dictatorships. Recently, this certainty has come into question again because of the events taking place in the neighborhood of West Africa. Ghana is currently the only country that has, by God's grace, so far not suffered the destabilizing attacks from the chaos in the Sahel. Indeed, 4 countries in the region have fallen victim to military junta rule as a result of the jihadist insurgency working its way from the Sahel towards the Atlantic coast. Participating in an election might have become routine for many people in Ghana, but there are many things that you take for granted here in Denmark, which will soon loom large in the considerations of a voter in Ghana. When people go to the polls in December, therefore, the first thing on their minds would be security. Would the government I help elect ensure that there'll be another election year in 4 years' time? Would my vote ensure that law and order will prevail in everyday activities? Would I be voting for a government that will preside over a credible judicial system that continues to protect the rule of law and respect human rights? Would the government that is elected ensure that there's peace and stability in the country so I can go about my daily life? Then there are the expectations that become grouped generally under a title of developmental needs. When people go to the polls, they're looking for a government that would work to cover the infrastructural deficit in terms of housing, roads, bridges, schools, and the provision of opportunities for jobs. Sometimes the aspirations are personal, and sometimes they are aimed at groups. There might be a particular road leading to someone's village, and building that road might be enough to guarantee a vote for the government currently in power, just as the promise by the opposition candidate to build that road would ensure a vote for him or her. A legitimate question to ask might be if there are ever ideological issues at stake in our elections, and what differences there are between the political parties. I would hesitate to spend a lot of time on ideology in relation to the political parties that will be contesting the elections in December, simply because the reality of our situation would often mean that a political party, like what I belong to, the New Patriotic Party, that will be seen as right of center in its beliefs, has been responsible for the introduction of more social intervention policies that will be termed as left-wing than any other party. A national health insurance policy that provides subsidized health care system for the population, a free senior high school policy, and a free technical vocational educational training policy that guarantee a minimum of secondary school education for all Ghanaian children, for example, will be seen in other parts of the world as left-wing policies, but they have been championed and implemented by my party, the Right of Centre New Patriotic Party. When people go to cast their votes, therefore, the choice they make are also motivated by the history behind the parties and candidates. I'm happy to be able to say that after 31 years and 8 times of going through the process, we now have an electoral commission that supervises elections of which we can all be proud. Essentially, the election year is about people. It is about their rights, their aspirations, and their hopes for a brighter future. We must continue to strive for a world where every vote is a voice that is heard loud and clear. I thank you for your attention. And may your deliberations over the next few years inspire actions that resonate across our nations and beyond, and promote freedom and respect for human rights and the rule of law. Thank you.
Mr. President, please take this center chair. Yes. Mr. President, thank you very much. Before we start, I would like to announce again that if you have questions, please ask them through the app and I will try to include them. Although we have a lot of topics to discuss in short time, and 3 of them were clearly outlined by you in your speech: democracy, economy, and security. And maybe the overarching question that came into my mind when I listened to your speech is, how close are we to the actual eye-level relationship between the West or Europe and Ghana or other African countries also?
I think one of the things we have always to be very careful about is talking about Africa in these broad general terms. We've got 54 nations. Many of them, in fact, all of them have their own particular relations. So I'm always a little bit reluctant to generalize. I mean, you see, for instance, at the vote of the United Nations over the Russian aggression against Ukraine. The majority of the nations of Africa voted in support of the resolution. Ghana was very much part of that majority, but there's also a substantial minority that voted against. So the eye-to-eye relationship, a lot of it depends on who you're talking about. Ghanaian relations with the European Union, with the United States, within the Commonwealth are very strong. We, as I said, for instance, on the matter of Ukraine, we took it that our history, which had been a history of struggle against imperialism, against colonialism, was a history that would not permit us to accommodate the invasion of a small nation by a great power. That is the whole history. The dynamic of Ghanaian history has been against big powers bullying small nations, and that therefore we could not see ourselves clear to voting. Yes, Russia, especially in its days as the Soviet Union, had been a strong ally of all of our nations in Africa in the fight for freedom and the fight against imperialism. But that, for me and for our government and for our people, did not therefore justify us turning a blind eye to what was going on in the Ukraine. And we continue to be a firm critic of the actions of Russia, with whom we enjoy very good relations otherwise, but we continue to be a critic of what they have done in the Ukraine. So I think I'm trying to draw a picture which is that we need to be very nuanced when we're talking about the various countries on the continent.
When I talk about eye level, I also mean that especially in this question, when it came to the UN resolutions in the Ukraine-Russia question, I felt there was a lot of diplomatic efforts between Africa and European countries, African and European countries, Germany and Ghana also, in terms of the actual vote that will be taken. You decided, as you just said, to vote in favor of rejecting the Russian invasion, and you argued it in a very interesting way, I think. You said it's against the great power domination of the world, the decision, in a way. Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
Yes. I think, as you know, and it may be that I see quite a lot of young faces here, so I can't assume that it is well known. But we were the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to get our freedom from colonial rule, 67 years ago in 1957, when we achieved independence from the British. And a very famous statement was made at the time by our leader then, that our freedom would be meaningless unless it was linked to the liberation of the rest of Africa. So the whole posture against great power rule, against imperial ambitions, against colonial annexation is very much part of the DNA of Ghana. And it remains so, despite the various changes in government and systems that we've had in our history. And that remains the position of the country, that we were, as you know, also one of the 5 nations that founded the non-aligned movement. Ghana, Egypt, India, the then Yugoslavia, and India were the 5 countries whose leaders banded together to found the non-aligned movement. So it's very much part of the DNA of Ghana to have always been anxious to stand up for the rights of the small nations of the world, the ones that need the protection of international law, the ones that need the protection of international systems and multilateralism, so that they can exist side by side with the great powers. So the example of what has taken place in Ukraine is an example that we think is very retrograde, and it is not an example we want to see defining the 21st century going forward. That small countries can be then attacked and overtaken by great powers, largely because they just want to swallow up small countries. So it's very much part of the DNA of Ghana, and it has been, and it continues to be. And it is something that, to a large extent, also transcends the politics of the domestic politics of the country. The various principal actors in the political space in Ghana are clear about Ghana's position on these matters.
When I was in Ghana with the German Chancellor in October, I saw you actually making a statement saying we do ask for support in the fight against terrorism and insecurity that you also see infiltrating in your own country. How do you see the situation now, and did that support actually come?
To a limited extent, it has been there, but that fight remains the primordial security issue in West Africa today. When I came into office in 2017, all 15 leaders of the 15 member states of ECOWAS were all elected leaders. Today, 4 of them have fallen victim to military rule. And all of them have been well passed with the exception of Guinea. But the 3, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the evolution has been strongly influenced by the jihadist insurgency that is being based in Mali. As you know, when Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown in Libya, and many of the fighters, the terrorist fighters, the jihadist fighters that had taken refuge in Libya, fled Libya across the desert and took refuge in northern Mali, is a relatively unprotected and ungoverned part of Mali. And since then, they have been systematically making efforts to spread their influence across West Africa. And now they are threatening the coastal states in West Africa, threatening Ghana, Benin, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, etc. We're having to find ways of cooperating. We in Ghana initiated something we call the Accra Initiative, which was a way of having the collaboration of the various nations as far as intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing was concerned. ECOWAS has also taken very strong positions on these developments and making efforts to, we're spending a lot of money, for instance, defending our northern border in Ghana. So far, we've been successful, largely because apart from the military measures that we're taking, there are also the political and social measures that we're deploying, especially in the northern part of the country, so that the strengthening of our defenses has gone hand in hand also with a deliberate effort to involve the population in the development issues, so that as much as possible, we don't give cause for the terrorists to exploit grievances to recruit terrorists to recruit young men who can be then transformed into terrorists.
One very last question, and I would like to have a short answer if that's possible. And we're coming back to the beginning, which is the election year that you're ahead of. You already mentioned your optimism when it comes to the elections in December. But tell me your prospect. What do you think? Is there a chance that democracy is getting, even more evolving after you, or do you think once I'm gone, or maybe let's see how?
No, it cannot be that after I'm gone, but then it will mean that our institutions are not working. Yeah. It's we're very determined. Everybody, the opposition, myself, all of us, the principal actors, as well as the parties that we lead, we're very determined to make sure that the progress that we have made over these last 8 elections, that we maintain that progress, and that we will have an election that is well conducted and that is credible, it is free, it is transparent, and it will give us the choice of the Ghanaian people, who will be the person who will succeed me as president. I'm hoping, of course, that it will be the candidate of my party.
I was going to say that. Mr.
Yeah. So that I don't think is a difficult one for anybody to understand. That's my hope. But
that's very legitimate.
But I don't intend to manipulate the system to achieve that result. It will be the freely elected choice of the Ghanaian.
And I think this is widely appreciated beyond Ghana. Thank you very much, Mr. President Akufo. Thank you.